The Arcade Attica Railroad, New Jersey Transit rail operations, and Steamtown National Historic Site. What do these three railroads have in common? Honestly, not much. But we here at Notch 8 Photography have, for the past 5 years, photographed unique and historic trains and railroads across New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. And these were a few of the sites we stopped at along the way. And we have photos to share from each of these sites in Tri-State Trackside. We're going to start with the New Jersey Transit Main Line, which runs from Hoboken Terminal all the way to Suffern, New York. I want everybody to take a moment and think about the most elegant 20th century train stations still in use today. Grand Central Terminal might come to mind given our locale, but there is another station just across the Hudson River, and that is where our journey begins. Hoboken Terminal was built in 1907 by the Lackawanna Railroad and sees daily intermodal passenger service from various buses, trains, and ferries. It is also the southernmost terminus for most Jersey Transit rail lines, including the main line, and, by extension, the Port Jervis line under Metro-North's West of Hudson service. It has also been the annual host of New Jersey Transit's Meet Our Fleet, an exhibition of both modern and historic diesel locomotives. Number 4202, seen here, took the center stage of the most recent show and displays a paint scheme honoring the predecessor Pennsylvania Reading Seashore Lines Railroad of South Jersey. New Jersey Transit has other diesel locomotives paying homage to its predecessor railroads. And on New Year's Day 2025, we were trackside with number 4208, which honors Conrail. Conrail played a major role in the formation of New Jersey Transit's current operations. The locomotive is seen here leaving Track 5 from Hoboken for the fuel pad before continuing north to Port Jervis. We're going to skip ahead about 9 station stops, and we're going to stop in Ridgewood, New Jersey. And this station is in Bergen County, and we find a Metro North locomotive, number 4906. Number 4906 is a one-of-a-kind diesel that was rebuilt from a freight locomotive in 1992. As we go along, we're going to see a bunch of these locomotives have a similar car body style, and all the locomotives I'll be featuring in this portion of the program were built by General Motors almost 60 years ago, and they're still in regular service almost 60 years later. With retirement on the horizon within the next 5 to 10 years, we're making it a point to get as many shots of these locomotives as we can. So here's 4906 approaching Ridgewood, and then a few hours later when the 4906 was going back to Hoboken. A little bit further up the line in Waldwick, New Jersey. It was a hazy day in July when we took this photo, and if you look in the background, you'll see another locomotive. That's actually the front of the train in the rear. The 4105 is taking up the rear of this train. It was placed on the south end of this train in lieu of a cab car, a self-propelled passenger car that usually takes up the rear of all trains out of Hoboken, and they lead on the way back. So the cab car, the passenger car, leads on the way into Hoboken, but for the northbound moves, a locomotive is leading. And in the background of this photo, you see the restored Waldwick Station Depot that was restored in 2018. And then north of the station is the famous Waldwick WC Tower, which was refurbished in 2016 by the Waldwick Historical Society. And there's number 4202 moving past the tower with a Port Jervis bound train. The funny thing about the Pennsylvania Reading Seashore Lines, or the PRSL, is that it never ran this far north of Atlantic City, so many rail fans commented about the absurdity of seeing the PRSL this far north. But no matter, the PRSL's legacy is alive and well. A view from beside the tower provides a nice look at all the tracks going in and out of Waldwick Station. If you notice, here's number 4208 before she was famous. One of our most unique catches on the main line was this Norfolk Southern freight train. Norfolk Southern freight trains operate on the main line, but they operate around commuter trains to avoid disruptions. Suffern, New York is the last stop on the main line under New Jersey Transit. As I said earlier, further north is Metro North tracks. But here in Suffern, New York, we encountered this locomotive that is painted for the Erie Railroad. The 4210 never was part of the original Erie, but its paint scheme pays homage to the Erie since it was a major New Jersey Transit Railroad predecessor. Who says trains can't fly? 4210 has some wings that say otherwise. At least for northbound moves. We caught it here shoving a southbound move to Hoboken Terminal. We're a quarter mile up the line from the Suffern station, and we're in Hilburn Yard, which is a layover yard for mainline train sets during the weekend. Here we see locomotives 4203 and number 4101 laying over. A key difference between the 4200s and the 4100s are that the 4100s, like the 4101 here, were originally built specifically for commuter service on the Central Railroad of New Jersey, another Jersey Transit predecessor. The 4200s were originally built for freight service on other railroads, and then in the 90s they were all sold and rebuilt for New Jersey Transit's commuter operations and have been in continuous passenger service for the past 30 or so years. Number 4101 has its 1979 to 1981 Jersey Dot livery. This is called Bluebird by rail fans. Another locomotive we saw in Hilburn Yard was number 4109. This is what the 4100s looked like when they were first delivered to the CNJ back in 1968. Note the Soo Line freight car in the back. Hilburn Yard is also served by Norfolk Southern, and that's where they switch out some freight that goes north. We're now on Metro North's portion of the line in Sloatsburg, New York, and we see a Metro North diesel number 4902 approaching Sloatsburg. One thing to note about photography in the wintertime is that you get a lot of dramatic shadows and harsh backlighting. This is probably the most difficult time of year for rail fan photographers like us to be out trackside. And further up the Port Jervis line in Campbell Hall, New York. 2 years in a row, we rang in the new year with a heritage locomotive, and this year we saw the PRSL engine coming north on train 73 to Port Jervis. Campbell Hall is also home to a rail yard served by the Middletown, New Jersey of Orange County, New York. The Middletown, New Jersey often borrows a locomotive from New Jersey Transit to supplement its own fleet. Here's number 4103. One thing to note, only 3 of the original 13 4100 series locomotives are kept in passenger service. Everything else has been delegated to non-revenue use, including number 4103 here. And 2 of those locomotives have been retired as of 2026. We're now in Otisville, New York. This Southern Railway intermodal freight trailer used to be accessible, but it has since been buried. And it used to be a nice prop for photographers to photograph trains going overhead. Here's number 4219 entering Otisville. And then earlier that year, that previous photo was taken in 2023. Earlier that year, we were trackside 2 days in a row to catch the 3 o'clock meet, as we call it. It's possible to see two trains meeting here, one going in either direction. On the left is Metro North's 4913 leading a Port Jervis bound train, while 4206 is taking up the rear of a Hoboken bound train. The next day, we caught them on the opposite moves. Here's 4206 pulling into Otisville. And our last stop for the Port Jervis line. Here's the Conrail locomotive pulling into Port Jervis. In the background is an original Erie Railroad passenger station, which is now home to a few small businesses. The actual station is a little bit further up. Certainly not as elegant as the original station, or Hoboken for that matter. From Port Jervis, we're going to hop on I-81 and head west to Scranton, Pennsylvania, to Steamtown National Historic Site. This is a very unique unit of the National Park Service. Usually when one thinks of the National Park Service, they think of Yosemite or some other natural location. They wouldn't think of a rail museum. Steamtown didn't start off this way. It started as a museum in Bellows Falls, Vermont, and moved to Scranton in 1984. However, the looming threat of bankruptcy and asset liquidation forced the National Park Service to become the unlikely saviors of Steamtown in 1986. One of our favorite attractions of the park is number 759, a steam locomotive built for the Nickel Plate Railroad in 1944 for fast freight service. Here it's being repositioned in the yard after being used for a night photo session, which we'll cover later on. On the left is Bridge 60 Tower, which is located exactly 60 miles from the Delaware Water Gap in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. It is owned by the neighboring Delaware-Lackawanna Railroad, which had their own nickel plate road locomotive posed there in July. Number 190 is a rare PA1 type diesel locomotive that was recently restored by the Delaware-Lackawanna. Number 190 is one of two PA1 diesel locomotives left in existence. The other one is in Fort Worth, Texas, undergoing a cosmetic restoration. And here's another favorite attraction to both us at Notch 8 Photography and all who visit Steamtown, the Union Pacific Big Boy. These monsters of locomotives were built in 1941 by the American Locomotive Company, or ALCO, and they were built exclusively for the Union Pacific Railroad. 25 were built to do the work of 5 steam locomotives over the Wasatch Mountains out west, as well as Sherman Hill. Of the 25 built, 8 are preserved, 1 operates excursions out of Cheyenne, Wyoming, and 4012 is the only one preserved east of the Mississippi River. So that's the biggest of Steamtown's locomotives. But what about the smallest one? This little tank engine, number 2, was unveiled in July following a lengthy cosmetic restoration. Note the gray saddle over the boiler. This is actually its water tank. The saddle tank locomotive, as it's called, this one in particular, that is, was built for the Bullard Machine Company, a company that produced most of the machines that are used in the Steamtown Backshop to restore and maintain these locomotives. Now, it would appear that number 2 is operating under its own power as it's pulling out onto the turntable here. In reality, it was being pushed by Steamtown's operational steam locomotive, number 26. 26 was built in 1929 by the Baldwin Locomotive Works and was built to switch freight cars in yards. but nowadays it's used to pull shuttle trips around the Steamtown rail yard. Under Steamtown's new superintendent, are firing up. A few more projects are getting started on the park grounds. This Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western World War II era troop sleeper is currently being funded by the Lackawanna Chapter Railway and Locomotive Historical Society and will be restored to its original World War II appearance in partnership with the Historical Society, Steamtown National Historic Site, and Steamtown's philanthropic partners, the Iron Horse Society. Another piece of Lackawanna Railroad history is undergoing a cosmetic restoration in the form of steam locomotive number 565. And in the back shop, a second steam locomotive is being restored to operational condition. This one is quite different from number 26. Number 26 is a traditional steam locomotive with drive wheels and drive rods, propelled by steam pressure that is generated in the boiler that goes down into the cylinders. Now, number one here does have drive wheels, but they're not powered by rods. Instead, they're powered by gears. This Shay type locomotive, as it's called, was built to climb steep hills in mountainous terrain and was common on logging railroads. A visit to the Steamtown back shop provides a lot of a lot of opportunities to witness demonstrations of how they maintained and restored steam locomotives back in the day. And our favorite demonstration involves the Ring of Fire, which demonstrates how steam locomotive tires were changed out back in the day. These massive drive wheels, such as the ones here belonging to Reading Company number 2124, a steam locomotive that was local to the anthracite regions of Scranton and Reading, these steam locomotive wheels had tires just like the tires we find on our automobiles. Now, it's easy to figure out how tires are changed on a car, but how are tires changed on a steam locomotive? You heat it up using fire here, and using the heat pressure, the tire expands. When it expands, hammers are used to knock the old tire off. A new tire is put in place, it's set on fire and heated, and then it cools off, and when it cools, it contracts and it falls into place. The Ring of Fire is often demonstrated during Steamtown's annual Rail Fest, which is their Labor Day weekend celebration. And here's Locomotive 2124, which we mentioned earlier, during the now annual night photo sessions that take place every Rail Fest. The locomotive on its left, on our left rather, is actually a steam locomotive that uses steam from an external source. It does not generate its own steam. And these were common in small industries. And here it is appearing to lend a helping hand to the larger steam locomotive by bringing it more coal. And here's 759 as part of the night photo session that we mentioned earlier. And this is a lineup of 4 steam locomotives that each ran at Steamtown during one point during its history. Another popular locomotive is number 6039. Number 6039 was built for long-haul freights and celebrated its 100th birthday in 2025. And scenes from the 2024 night photo sessions brought in the Nickel Plate Railroad locomotives, number 759, and the park's diesel locomotive, number 514. And here they are at the roundhouse, joined by number 190. And now we're skipping back to 2025. We're still at the Roundhouse, but this time we have two of Delaware Lackawanna's locomotives. These two were built by the American Locomotive Company of Schenectady, New York, and they have been recently repainted into historic liveries. The 2454 has its original Erie Lackawanna paint scheme, and 4068 has its original Delaware and Hudson Railroad paint scheme. I mentioned Schenectady, New York, which is 177 miles rather, northeast of Scranton, where we're at now. We're actually going to head northwest from here, and we're going to wind up 275 miles away from Schenectady and in a town that's 60 miles away from Niagara Falls. This is the Arcade Attica Railroad, and we're here to celebrate the return of steam locomotive 18 to passenger service. Number 18 was built by Alco in their Cook, New Jersey shop, originally for Cuban export in 1920. However, the order was canceled, and number 18 instead found its way to several short lines before calling the Arcade Attica home in 1962. The locomotive returned to service in late 2024 following an extensive, federally mandated inspection and overhaul that lasted about 6 years. Dynamo Productions and Timeless Rail Expeditions each teamed up to help celebrate the return of number 18 with an all-day photo charter. As with most photo charters, only 40 participants were allowed in. It was a ticketed event that brought in props and reenactors such as this 50s era Thunderbird. For the first half of the day, number 18, a post-war steam locomotive, was pulling a set of modern hopper cars. With a group as big as ours, we split up here and 20 of us shot the bridge here while others shot a sweeping curve. We switched places after the first run by. And here at an S-shaped curve, number 18 let off a lot of steam, reminding us all why the locals in Arcade call number 18 the goddess of fire. It's worth noting that 18 doesn't usually face this way on a regular basis. The head is facing Arcade. It's usually facing away from Arcade. And the Arcade Attica doesn't have a turntable, which begs the question, how'd they turn the engine? What appears to be another sweeping curve is actually the leg of a Y. A Y is the equivalent of a three-point turn for trains and locomotives. They spun number 18 on the Y the night before so that it would be facing Arcade for better lighting. However, Mr. Sun decided to hide behind the clouds on this day. One of the perks of attending a photo charter is the fact that you get certain photo opportunities that you wouldn't get on a normal basis. Number 18 was operated past this grain elevator, which is now home to a modern church. Given the day of week in which this train operated, I'm sure the minister wasn't expecting to hear the blast of a steam whistle during worship service, especially since number 18 doesn't usually come this far south of Arcade. And in this shot, you could see how the rain was picking up and complicating matters for us photographers. It was right around this time when we broke for lunch for about an hour, but let's get out of the rain and go into the engine house where we find steam locomotive number 14. 14 is the Arcade Attica's second steam locomotive and was built by the Baldwin Locomotive Works. Number 14 represents an early 20th century passenger locomotive, while 18 is an example of a 20th century freight locomotive. But both are medium-sized and proved to crews that they can pull just about anything. Number 14 went out of service in 1988 and requires a very expensive overhaul if it ever is to operate again. After our lunch break, we rode the train to Curriers, New York for another set of photo opportunities. We rode the full length from Arcade to Curriers, and it was quite relaxing. And here's a few more passengers posed by the station. and another classic automobile in the form of this Chevrolet truck. This crossing is not usually accessible to rail fans, but is another site that we were able to shoot at thanks to the cooperation of Dynamo Productions and Timeless Rail Expeditions with neighboring property owners, that is. And here's number 18 at a small industry known as Empire. And here the locomotive is seen passing an Alco-built RS3 type diesel locomotive. We haven't mentioned this diesel locomotive yet, although it played a major role in our photo charter. While number 18 had the freight cars, number 114 here was pulling the passenger cars we rode to each photo location. Much like number 4068, which was earlier in the program, number 114 was originally built for the Delaware and Hudson Railroad. Both locomotives saw freight service on that line. And here's one more of 18 and 114. We're now in the parking lot of the Arcade Fire Department, and there's that 50s Thunderbird again. And finally, we're back at the bridge. It was here where we hosted a small night photo session where videographers and photographers were able to capture the locomotive in motion, and we were also able to get stills of the locomotive as it posed atop the bridge. There was a little bit of rain that made it a little bit complicated to get good shots, but we managed. And here's one more for the road. As we wrap up our program, I want to come back to the question that we posed at the beginning of this program. What does Steamtown National Historic Site, the Arcade Attica Railroad, and New Jersey Transit Rail operations all have in common? They each provide different aspects of passenger rail travel. You can experience each of these locations by rail or trackside, and we've only scratched the surface of what we have to offer from these three railroads. We want to thank you for joining us tonight on Notch 8 Photography, and we hope that you'll join us next time when we share more stories of our trackside journeys in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night.